Welcome to the Safe Business Agility Podcast. This is the place to get advice, stories, perspectives, and updates about safe and related topics to help you work differently and build the future. This week's episode is brought to you by Rally, the only purpose-built solution designed to scale Agile and unite the enterprise to empower value stream management and digital transformation. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. On today's episode of the Scaled Agile Business Agility Podcast, we're pleased to welcome a longtime friend, Fabiola Eyholzer from Just Leading Solutions. Fabiola is an Agile HR expert and also launched the very first product on the Scaled Agile Partner Marketplace. So enjoy this conversation about all things people with Fabiola. Well, Fabiola, this is one of those awkward introductions where we can do the typical web conference Zoom thing and we can say good morning and good evening because it's my morning, it's your evening, unless you're in Texas. Where are you at right now?
I am in Texas right now, so it's my morning too.
Your morning's actually earlier than mine right now. I never know. So I work a lot with your business partner, Michael, and I just never know where he is.
Yeah, that's part of working globally, but it's also fascinating because you get to work with so many people in so many different time zones. And as you just said, it's oftentimes the first question that we get, where are you at right now?
Now, I did hear a rumor that you relocated from New York to Texas. So welcome to the greatest country on earth, which is Texas.
Thank you.
So Fabiola, I think a lot of people listening might know who you are, but certainly not everybody. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what your story is, and how the heck you got to do what you're doing now?
Absolutely. So my name is Fabiola Eyholzer, and my journey into agility started 12 years ago when I was running the Swiss market for a European HR consultancy. And we were looking for a new leadership model for our career starters. And I met some Agile coaches and they're like, you have to do Scrum. And I'm like, what? Scrum? Did you hear me say that we are an HR consultancy? We're not an IT shop. And trust me, it's the right thing to do. And what can I say? It's just been such an eye-opener that within the first days, I knew agility is the future. And I knew that I'm going to dedicate the next phase of my career to Agile HR to agility. And it's been just amazing. It's been a fantastic journey so far. And I always tell people I have the best job in the world because I get to work with amazing people, amazing organizations, people who are not afraid to challenge the status quo, and who want to make a difference. So it's been a blast ever since. I focus really on the HR side of business agility, because it doesn't matter what we do. If we don't get the people side right, we are not going to be an agile organization. We're not going to be a successful organization going forward.
So I think, Fabiola, there's two interesting things that you touched on there. And it sounds like the first one was, Agile operations, right? So how do we work in small batches more efficiently in the delivery of the things that HR provides an organization? And then there's a second profound component, which is how do we behave more in alignment with the mindset, values, and principles? And I'll say, I kind of have some experience in this area too. I led a few large-scale Agile HR adoptions, but then beyond that, it was I built and launched a practice at Accenture called People Agility, which is essentially a model for leadership as a service, which says, instead of the Tayloristic model of we need to manage the people for compliance in the system, it's how does the system serve the people in a way to bring out all of the things, all of the thought leadership, all of the deep work that we need from them in this information age. So I would love to hear first about Agile HR Operations. So you're working in HR consulting. You're doing a lot of the, we must protect the organization from the people type of old school HR work. How did the new way of working and serving the organization through the method really start to impact you and then also your clients?
Mm-hmm. So this is a longer story because, as you already alluded to, HR
Fabiola, we have complex.
Time. That's wonderful. So
go for it.
We have a lot to unpack there. because there are so many different elements and aspects to HR. So you talked about HR operations. How do we deliver higher value faster? How can we streamline the way that we're putting work out there? But then there is also people agility. How do we help individuals really build on their strength so that they can reach their potential much faster than they could by themselves? And that is the way that they are contributing to the organization. But then there are other aspects as well. How do we make sure that people feel connected? Because that's the side of team agility, people agility that we often forget. Because if, we focus so much on skills and competencies that people bring to the table, that we can forget the human aspect of teamwork. Does someone feel connected to the team? Does someone feel safe in the team? Does someone see a future in the team? All of that is influencing team performance and the way that people show up for their team and for the organization. And all of these aspects are part of HR agility. And to come back to your to the final part of your question or your comment is, yes, we're changing that system. And we have to remember that this history of HR is quite long. So HR term was first used in 1893 by J.R. Cummins. So we have a long history, and whether we like it or not, a lot of our thinking is still deeply rooted in that time. How we incentivize people, how we try to connect with people, how we think about the organization is deeply rooted there. And we have to stop thinking about the organization as a machine, as an engine. And we have to start thinking about the system or the organization as an ecosystem, as a thriving, living, breathing, complex, adaptive system. And if we can make that shift, we're naturally going to look at HR and the way that we're connecting with people and leveraging the power of and the potential of people in a very different way.
No, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, so for me, and the way that I always kind of positioned it was, we're shifting the mission of HR from a mechanism for compliance and predictable throughput to one that seeks to optimize the employee experience from hire to retire. And, so there's, kind of that capstone. And then you look at the three main elements of HR, the three main functions, which is, hiring and onboarding. Then we have to develop and retain. And then there's kind of that compliance and separation component, whether it's retire or, otherwise. And, those three components behave differently. And when you start thinking from the lens of our goal is to optimize the experience. So when we onboard, right, how do we make that look and feel different? To your point, how do we make this feel like the right decision for the people that are interviewing with us, for the people that are, day one with us or pre-day one? And then when we talk about develop and retain, it's, well, how do we have dynamic career paths that promote individual excellence, but also teamwork? And how do we make sure that you've got the things that you need to succeed? And then when we talk about, retire in the offboarding paths, look, even if somebody is terminating under egregious circumstances, there's a respectful way to do that. And we need to figure out ways to optimize and humanize that very unpleasant experience to the best of our ability. And I think when you frame it in that way, again, our mission is to optimize the employee experience. That really shifts the headspace of a lot of HR professionals. And for a lot of people, it makes HR less scary, right? Because I think a lot of people, when they see that email from HR or that meeting from HR, their first reaction is terror. And wouldn't it be cool if it wasn't terrifying? Wouldn't it be cool if HR was so interested in how you feel in the organization and how you're doing and the things that you need for your career that we get excited when those emails pop up?
And I think that's the thing that makes me most sad about HR is that in HR you have so many amazing people, passionate people, people who really care, who want to make a difference. But because they're stuck in that old system, in that old thinking, they cannot really bring that to the table. So they are focused or pulling themselves back into that, happiness police and policy makers. And they just operate in that old thinking of that old system, even though you have so many amazing people within HR. And that's where we see once you start shifting, making that transition, you see HR people come to life. And if they come to life, the employees, the organization is coming to life. And that's just wonderful to see. And as you said, it starts by rethinking that talent contract. What do people expect from their work? And how do we look at talent? How do we look at the potential that people bring to the table? And traditionally, we think about talent as a select few. You know, we have a couple of star players and we kind of cater to them. They're going to win our annual awards and they're going to be in every publication and so on and so forth. But
You're gonna hit a sensitive point for me right there, Fabiola, right? Because if you look at like most traditional Jack Welch style incentive models, it's about exactly that, right? So the vast majority of people on a performance evaluation are a 3.5 to a 4. And why are they that? Because the system dictates they must be that. And if you're a manager, well, then, not a manager, let's say you're a division director. Well, in your entire division, you are allocated 1-5. You can give 1-5 to one superstar in your organization. And you also must probably on every team have 1-2. Everybody's got, there's a 2 on every team. And then everyone else is kind of in the middle. And, you know, the mechanism for that was stack ranking was for incentivizing performance to a certain minimum standard. So then we could also then cut the bottom 5 or 10% every year to reinstill fear in the system to assure compliance. And that's so toxic, right? And there's some organizations I've consulted with in the past that have the 5-star award, right? So for every person that got a 5, they have a big ceremony, they get a plaque. And every year that happens, for a month in the system, all you have is animosity. People are angry about, well, that person politicked to get that 5 and this person deserved it. And it's so counterproductive, right? Those performance and incentive models that are meant to basically bring out the greatness in people, assure minimum performance and maximum compliance, and also maximum animosity. It's gross.
yes. And, you know, it really shows that our thinking is in a rut. We hire the best people that we can, but within a year or 2 years or 5 years, they are low performers. You know, they're just 1s and 2s. Well, the question is that on them or is that on us? Okay. And as you said, what message are we sending out by hailing the same people? And sometimes these people may not be nice colleagues. You know, sometimes these people build their success on the back of others. And if you look at the work from Amy Edmondson around psychological safety, this is an aspect of it. Or if you look at the work of, you know, when we look at fixed mindsets and growth mindsets, organizations who hail only a select few, that's an indication of a fixed mindset. But that's not what we want today. We need to have people with a growth mindset. And in order to do that, we need to consider everyone a talent. Everyone comes to the table with a unique set of skills and experiences and characteristics. And the question is, how do we leverage that? How do we build those great places of work where people feel they can be their best self and they can grow? And here we have so many different things that we need to change. And it starts by really speaking that same language. We talked about talent, but also performance. You know, in the past, performance was just task completion. So a system where you said, okay, either you do these 5 things or you're out, it may have worked. It may not have been a nice way of working, but it worked. But today, performance is no longer task completion. It is value contribution. Did I show up for my team? Did I help the team contribute in whatever way that is? Maybe you're someone who's just doing all the menial tasks that the teams don't want to do, or where the team feels like, hey, you're really helping the entire team be successful. And we need to cherish that as well, because every contribution is valuable. And as you said, it's a very different way of looking at the world and thinking about organizations.
Sure. It's a shift in how the entire organization behaves, right? Because back to your point about our mechanisms not really changing since the Industrial Revolution, when you're on a production line and you're building widgets, output's all that matters, right? How consistently can we deliver a certain number of, I don't know, brake pads, you know, every single day without fail, without deviation? Like, how can we plan to that? Output is key. But in our modern age, in the information age, we don't really care about outputs, right? It's about outcomes. If we just create a feature factory, but the features aren't the right features and they're not the desirable features, then it doesn't matter that you created 100 features. It's more important that you achieve the outcome and maybe only deliver 2 features that are the right features. And in a lot of organizations that we work with, that is a hard behavior to overcome, because if you think of like executive incentive models, right? They're still based in that old way of thinking. And then that cascades through. So when we often hear people say, well, leadership supports us, leadership might support in words, but do their actions and do their incentive structures really allow us to be successful in a model that promotes outcomes over outputs? So there's a big shift that has to take place and in my experience working in large scale enterprise transformations, that's the block. It's not that leaders and senior executives don't recognize the right thing to do, because they're smart people. They know. They knew this before we showed up. But what really serves as the bottleneck is, well, what's their long-term incentive model, right? What are they being incentivized to do? And if those incentives aren't aligned with the new way of working, there's only so much they're going to do, right? Because at that level, it's a very short walk out the door. It's a very long road to find the next gig. You're probably going to have to relocate your family if you lose that job. And if you don't achieve that long-term bonus, well, then that's your cushion, right? For a lot of folks, when they hit that first or second horizon and those bonuses, well, then, they'll take a little more risk because then they've got a little bit of a cushion. And I've seen this in so many corporations where, that's where it stops. We can want to do all of the right things, but when it comes down to it, it's the people at the top of the pyramid and how they're incentivized to behave that dictates our success or failure. So when we talk about shifting HR, it's also, not just compensation models, but also incentive models.
Absolutely. Everything goes hand in hand, and especially incentive models really show our underlying mindset, our belief. Do we believe that people are intrinsically motivated, that people want to do great work, that people want to show up for their team? And if we do, we have to change the system, and we have to really start thinking about what does work mean in this new context. You mentioned, that shift from the industrial era to the information era. Now we're at the cusp of the augmented era. So and most work, or a lot of routine work, transactional work, has already been automated, and more is to come. So the question is, what type of work is left for us humans, and what motivates us to do that type of work? So unless we really dig deep and have a fundamental understanding of how do we run our organizations, what do we truly believe in, and follow through, we're not going to get there. And you're absolutely right. If you want to look at how agile organizations really are, if they truly buy in, follow the money, look at the way they do portfolio management, performance management, bonuses, anything to do with money is probably going to be your best indicator of how agile are they really. And it also shows
100%.
How difficult transformation is, because it's so deeply rooted within us to say we need to give individual incentives if we want to have high performance. That meritocracy is so deeply rooted that it's super hard for us to change.
PIplanning.io. If you know, you know. If you don't know, well, go check out YouTube. But you'll have that little jingle in your head the rest of the day. You're welcome. Today's episode is powered by PIplanning.io, the go-to solution for your PI planning needs. Struggling with remote planning sessions? PIplanning.io brings your team together wherever they are. It's user-friendly, incredibly effective, and makes complex planning a breeze by providing a real-time collaborative environment and seamlessly syncing planning results back to your ALM of choice. If you've ever had to do this sync manually like I have, you know how powerful this feature is and how much time it saves you. Elevate your agile game with PIplanning.io. Plan smarter, deliver faster. Check it out today at PIplanning.io. Now back to the show. Fabiola, you mentioned kind of the nature of working and automation and things like that. I'm curious, have you ever read the work by Cal Newport? He has a book called Deep Work. Have you ever seen that?
No, I haven't. Tell me more about it.
So it was, I want to say it's maybe 8 years old now, but it really talks about the evolving nature of work and how automation can really unlock some great things in people. And the idea is how great could you be if you didn't waste energy on menial repetitive tasks? And it talks about how the most valuable skill for the information age and for the future isn't what specific thing can you do, but how quick can you learn new complicated concepts. And when we look at information workers or we look at knowledge workers, it really is about that, right? It's, I often tell people, like, when I'm hiring, right, I look for a basic set of skills. Are you going to be a good fit for our team? Or are you going to come in and it's going to just be chaos because our personalities don't mesh? Do you have a general aptitude to learn new stuff? Do you have an eagerness to learn new stuff? If you have those things, I don't care what your background is, because the nature of the work that we do is rapidly changing, and it doesn't matter so much. It matters some, what you've done and what you know. But what's more important is your ability to learn new stuff fast and your attitude and aptitude when you do it. If you're a deep learner and you're an ambitious learner, you will be a good fit on our team. And if there's any skill gaps, we'll fill those quick enough. But it's all about hiring for cultural fit. It's about, again, that willingness to learn, that willingness to grow. I mean, when I think back to the software things I learned in college, if I tried to work based on those things that I learned then, I would be completely useless. And when I look at even the new curriculums, I'm doing a little bit with Duke University and their software engineering and their management programs. And I'll tell you right now, Duke's a great school. It's basically the Harvard of the South. But if you show up with your Duke degree, the first thing that we're going to have to do on our team is unlearn all of the bad habits that they've just spent 4 to 6 years teaching you. Because even though that's a great institution, what they're teaching is not on par with how we work today. It's old news.
Yes, and as you said, we have to stop talking about the employees as information workers or knowledge workers. They are learning workers. So that's the new era. And as you said, we need people, the right skills, those basic skills that you need are just going to get you through the door. But after that, it's really about that potential to thrive in an uncertain, volatile, complex world. So how agile can you be? As you said, can you flex your muscles? Can you learn and unlearn things? Can you feel comfortable with that ambiguity of not knowing what your job may look like 6 months from now, is 2 years from now? And that is totally changing the game. And also when we start talking about recruiting, we should never forget that team dynamic to go with it. Is someone the right fit? Not from a skills, from a competency perspective, because we assume that that's how they got to go on an interview in the first place. But after that, do we match the right people? And that is also something that we sometimes forget when there are situations or challenges within a team. Maybe it's not that the person is not good at their job. Maybe it's that person is just not in the right team. So maybe you have to
Fabiola, that is so important to point out. So back in the day when I had my company and when we would be designing engagements, we used a tool I'm sure you're familiar with and other folks as well. It's called DISC. It's a DISC personality assessment. And so when we would hire somebody to determine, are you going to be a good fit with our team and the folks you're going to work for, we would do that as like a top level screener, right? Are you going to fit with this group? But then when we were designing engagements, we would again use that tool to really think, what is the client asking? What is the personality of the client? What personalities are going to work well with that client? And we'd build an engagement team around that personality fit. Because when we talk about transformation work, the most important element, it's not the frameworks, it's not the words, it's the personalities. Can you effectively move how these people are thinking and feeling? And in personality fit, team fit, that's the most important thing. Curious, are you familiar or have you done much research on the concept of leadership as a service?
No, I haven't. So we obviously experience it in many of our clients who are really forward thinking and brave, but I haven't done any research on it myself.
So it's my favorite leadership model, right? So basically, instead of me being assigned to you because that's how the vertical works, we flip the paradigm and say, as an individual, as a person, a more junior person in any structure, right? If I'm, an SVP, I still have a need for leadership. So I want to think about, well, based on my goals and based on what I want to learn, who am I best aligned with to achieve those things? And it's a conversation, right? So I could say, I really want to be a senior leader in HR, and I really admire how Fabiola shows up, and I admire her relationships with people. I think she's a great person to learn from. So then you and I would have a conversation. I would outline my goals, and we would decide, is this relationship a productive one? And we would then have that subordinate senior leader relationship based on that mutual agreement. And then if there's ever a point in time where that relationship soured, maybe you got busy, maybe our goals are now misaligned, we could dissolve that, and I could then go out and find a new leader to align with. When I was at Accenture, that's the model that we launched, and it was really kind of cool. In a matrix organization like that, the hard part was there's more than one leader, right? So you're the leader that you select and create that relationship is, your systemic HR leader. But then you have your engagement leads, and you have your client account leads, and you have your business area leads. So there was a lot of people that contributed to that leadership relationship. But that service model of, as an individual, I have goals that I want to achieve, and I'm going to find someone to create a relationship that can help me get there. It ended up being a really powerful thing.
Yes, it definitely is. And as you said, it takes a village. This is not just about I have one contact person. No, I have many people who support me in my along my growth journey. And we also have to start thinking, when we look at leadership, what we do from an Agile HR perspective is we look at the systems and the processes and the tools and actually see, do they help us get that leadership behavior that we're looking for? And quite often it doesn't. So, it doesn't matter that we tell our leaders, you have to be more agile or you have to empower people. If we are not changing the processes, if we're not changing the way they engage with people, if we keep doing employee appraisals and all these things, nothing is going to change. So we really need to apply systems thinking here to say, if this is the desired behavior, what are we going to do from a systems perspective to really help foster that behavior and not be counteractive? And right now we see these worlds clash.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the biggest, hurdle we hear a lot from, especially people early on in their journey is, well, I want to do all of these things, but how do I behave when the system still dictates I do an annual performance review? And I wrote a book about this a few years ago. It was called Surviving Performance Reviews. And it was basically, how do you bridge that gap? If the system forces you to use this mechanism, how can you still embody all of the mindsets and the values and the principles and the things that are important to us to serve the people, in your charge in the most human way possible? I really feel like a lot of organizations 2 or 3 years into their journey are at a place where they can start moving away from that annual performance appraisal. Some never do because it's just so deeply, well, let's be honest, right? They bought an HRIS and the HRIS says we have to do annual performance reviews. And they're like, well, I can't change the system, so we'll just, whatever. But people are interesting. Fabiola, I do want to pivot, and I want to talk about JLS, your company. Will you tell us a little bit about, what you're building, and what are some of the service offerings that you're bringing to market in this space?
So we're working with all types of organizations across the globe, from the private, public, education sector, social sectors. And we help them embrace business agility through the people side, so HR and business agility. And we help them make that transition to this new world of new way of working and setting up organizations as ecosystems. And what's interesting about this work is what they all have in common is it doesn't matter so much what social culture they're in, what corporate culture they are in. They all have that gut feeling that there must be a better way out there to do things, and they're gutsy about it. So they are not scared to push boundaries, to push the status quo and say, hey, we don't know where this journey is going to lead us, but we know it's the journey we need to take, no matter how difficult it is. And what we see is that it is a rewarding journey. If you really embark on it and say, okay, we believe this is the right thing to do, We need to create different types of organizations. Then they're embarking on that journey, and we're helping them make that transition.
Fabiola, you just said something, and this is a question. It's not something I plan to ask, and I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are. Have you, in your experience, have you kind of felt like this desire to change the system and be more human? Do you feel like it's a generational evolution, or do you think it's people who have worked in an old way just deciding that there's a better way? And like I've had a few long-term clients, and to have those things really take hold, it's almost taken a generational shift, right? So people that I talked to maybe a decade ago that were, individual contributors or managers, as they mature in their career and there's a turnover in senior leadership. So those people have built and matured in the system. Maybe now they're VPs and SVPs. And the people that were SVPs and VPs 10 years ago are retired. It almost feels like that taking the reins is what it's really required for some of these organizations to make that shift. Because in some mechanisms, we've worked a certain way for so long and it's all that we know, and we don't have the energy to change now. But then the people that we've been talking to and the people that grew up in it with a different mindset and a different systemics view, I kind of feel like they're really taking the reins and making those changes large scale as they get the authority to do so. Have you seen that, or am I just making things up?
No, I think the generational aspect is certainly there. But I think it's also influenced by the environment. So many things have changed around the way that we connect, how technology revolutionizes not just our work life, but also our personal lives. And I think that is adding that pressure of changing that talent contract. What do people expect from work? How do they want to work? And we feel that pressure regardless of the generations. So, sometimes it's easier for the younger generation to articulate certain things, but they can't embed it from a systems thinker's perspective. So I think it really takes the experience from different generations and the points of view from different generations to make this transition happen.
I want to be clear too that I didn't, I guess maybe it didn't come out right. I didn't mean it from like an age perspective. I think more like generations of talent in an enterprise, right? So for example, if you say your first job out of college was with an organization and you've been 10 years there and that's all that you know, I find that it's harder to make that change from that system that you grew up in, no matter how old you are, versus, people that have experienced different things and they come in and they have a different energy. And maybe it has to do with age, maybe it doesn't. Maybe I don't really have my idea well put together, but it's interesting to see the dynamics, and maybe it's personalities of people that are willing to step up and take the risk to change the system versus those who are just more comfortable with the status quo.
Some of it may be, things are settled and human beings are fascinating. On the one hand, we are creatures of habit. On the other hand, we can pivot if we need to, but no, some people are more open to change, adapt than others are, which doesn't mean that they don't have the capability to actually change. And I think a lot of it has to do with personality as well. I can tell you a story. My dad, a couple of weeks before he got retired, and he was with the same company for 49 years. So a couple of weeks before he got retired, they changed one of their IT systems. And he went through the entire training. He said, okay, it's a way for me to learn. I'm going to do it, even though he could have easily said, hey, I'm going to be out of here 3 weeks from now. Why should I attend and go through that training? But for him, it was just, okay, let me just flex my muscles a bit more. Let me get a challenge and do it. And so I think it has a lot to do with personality as well. But I also think this is the thing about transitioning to this new way of working, is you never quite know who's going to be successful and who isn't. So we see that over and over again. You have some people who you think, okay, it's going to be a walk in the park for them, and they really struggle. And other people where you think, okay, he's going to be a nightmare, he's never going to get it. They transition very quickly because it's playing a different game. And until you play it, you don't know whether or not you're going to be good at it.
You just reminded me of a really funny story from the past. And so first off, you're absolutely right. I mean, in any transformative journey, not everyone's going to make the journey. and that's got to be okay, right? And they'll kind of self-select out. There was this one guy, his name's Jay. I'll never forget him. He was the guy sitting with his arms folded in the back of, at that time, it was an Agile boot camp. And he was just day one, engineer Jay, this stuff's not going to work. And by the end of day two, he just unfolded his arms. He said, Adam, I thought this was a bunch of malarkey, but you sold me. I'm your biggest advocate. You can call me your Scrum Lord. He was a big Star Wars fan. He didn't like Scrum Master. He wanted to be Scrum Lord. He said, I'll be your Scrum Lord, Jay, and I'll make sure that we embrace this stuff. And for the next 3 years with that client, he just, something flipped in his head, and he ended up being, for as analytical as he was, like the best advocate. And like he embraced Scrum Lord. He dressed up as Darth Vader. And I mean, because that was just his personality, right? He wasn't like a bossy, like hardcore kind of person, but he led by example. He was just a good personality that said, prove it to me. And then he bought into the why, and he was just amazing. And I mean, I never would have expected on day one that he would have been the one that ended up being the biggest advocate, but you can't really judge people, right? People show up and they want different things, and they're just amazing. That's one of the things I love most about this space is, I mean, I'm an eternal believer in people. Like I fully believe in the limitless potential of everybody. Like anybody can do anything. And I would love to be the one to help you get to wherever it is that you want to go. And, we all have different journeys and we all have different personalities, but that doesn't mean that our potential is limited. And that's the coolest thing about this space is you really get to kind of create those mechanisms and those systems that allow people to just be them and be excited. And wow, when you can take somebody who was miserable and help them change their circumstances and watch them just flourish, it is such a cool thing.
It is, absolutely. And that's why I love being in the agile space. The journey is not always easy. It's usually quite an
It
uphill
never is.
battle.
Never easy.
But it's just so rewarding. And when you have people that you've worked with come back to you and say, hey, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. Thank you so much for including me in that journey. That is very meaningful. It's meaningful for them. It's meaningful for us. And that's really why I'm in this business. We are really making a difference.
Fabiola, in our ecosystem, you've been a superstar for a while and everyone's loved you for a lot of years. And you can blush and say, oh, that's not true, but it is, right? You've been a really strong advocate and somebody that we've really trusted in the work that we do at Scaled Agile for a lot of years. And because of that, earlier this year, we launched our first partner showcase or our partner marketplace. And as a partner, you were able to be the first to pilot a product in our partner marketplace. Will you please tell folks a little bit about what that is, how they can get engaged?
Absolutely. So yes, we're called just leading solutions because most of the work that we're doing is advisory work and consulting work. So we're rolling up our sleeves and we're helping organizations change their HR space and HR landscape. But learning is a key part of that as well. So every journey starts with a training, starts with learning. Because we need to speak the same language. We need to know what we're embarking on. And it's been a pleasure to partner up with Scaled Agile, as I said, for many years, and now finally launch this product. It's our Agile HR Explorer course. So it's an introductory course to Agile and Agile HR for HR professionals, where they get to learn about the new world of work. What does it truly mean? What does it mean to talk about the future of work? Why does that change or challenge HR? And how does Agile and agility factor in? So it's really a great way to either kick off your Agile transformation or take it to the next level if you're already on that journey.
And so there's two levels to that product, right? So there's the Agile HR Enabler, which is you've gone through the enablement and you are now qualified to teach Agile HR Explorer. And there's two digital badges that go with that. One is the Enabler, one's the Explorer. So, if you're a person leading a transformation, either as an external consultant or an internal change agent, you have the capability to go into Safe Studio and get enabled to teach Agile HR Explorer and really speak that language to your own HR people. Like, you can learn from Fabiola the tips and tricks and the ins and outs and the things that you want to say and the things you don't want to say. So you have that framework of how you want to talk to your HR people, because what we don't want to do is show up to HR, like you first said, Fabiola, with this Scrum stuff, and isn't that for IT people? We want to be able to talk to HR people in their own language and empathize with their own unique challenges. And that's what the enabler course, the enablement path teaches you, right? So how do you show up? How do you have those conversations? How do you casually defer things that you don't know the answer to? And then the Agile HR Explorer badge means that you've been through the course, you've taken the exam, and you understand the foundations of what it means to be an Agile HR organization. So you can then go down that path and do the good work of changing how your organization behaves. And I can say, having taken the enablement from you, it's pretty awesome stuff.
Thank you so much. And we see a lot of SPCs and Agile folks who are starting to teach the material. And it's an amazing way to connect with your HR people. Because even though you may speak a different language right now, you still have the same goals. You want to create a humanized work. You want to set up work in a way that connects with people and where we can be more adaptive, more responsive organizations. So we have the same goal at the end of the day. And this training is really a great way for you to reach out to your HR counterparts and embark with them on that journey.
Fabiola, I want to thank you. Your positive vibes and good energy today are just the best way to start the day. I feel energized to go do good things, and I hope that the folks listening got a little bit of that contact high that I did as well, just from your good energy and your authentic, just the way you care about people. It's a really important thing. So thank you for making the time. To wrap up, will you tell people where they can go to learn more about you, Just Leading Solutions, and where they can find Agile HR Explorer?
So they can go to our website, justleadingsolutions.com. They can ping me on LinkedIn. There is only one person with my name, so you should be able to find me. And then you can also go to the Scale Agile platform. You can either book trainings through there, or you can do the enablement if you haven't done so yet. It's a great way to learn whether or not you want to teach going forward. Once you've done, reach out to us. We can help you on that path, on that journey, and help you really move HR and organizations further.
That's perfect. And Fabiola, we'll link all of that in the show notes so people don't have to try and spell your name and find you. We'll put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. We'll link Just Leading Solutions and also put a link into the Safe Studio assets. So thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Adam, for having me.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. The entire team at Scaled Agile is focused on helping you and your enterprise work differently and build the future. If you find this content valuable, please tell your colleagues and friends and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. To share your suggestions for the show, just drop us a line at podcast@scaledagile.com. I'm Adam Mattis. See you next time.